Welcome back to You Not Gonna Like This. This is episode 10, Climate Change. Yes, we're back with another popular topic. Last episode we talked about misconceptions of relationships, and this time we're gonna shift into another popular topic, which is climate change. Today with us we have Ian Christian, track athlete at George Mason. If I'm not mistaken, your major is international politics, correct?
It's global affairs.
Global affairs. I was almost there, just a little bit off. But uh, he's with us, a guy very passionate about climate change. I'm gonna let him introduce himself. Go ahead, Ian.
Yeah, so like Ira said, my name is Ian Christian, and I'm a senior at George Mason University. I'm majoring in global affairs with a concentration in global governance and a minor in conflict analysis and resolution. Uh, First I'd like to say what an honor it is to be here. I'm so glad that I was chosen to talk about this issue. You know, I think if you know me, climate change is something that I'm very passionate about for many reasons. So, yeah. And I'd like to give a shout out to my good brothers and the two amazing hosts of You Not Gonna Like This, Proctor Beard Jr. and Ira Walker Jr., two young black men who said they wanted to create something and went out and did the shit. Excuse me, went out and did it. Side note, as a shameless plug, I'd also like to give a shout out to Amon Bivens, Tyler Benson, and Aaron Watson, the co-creators of the clothing brand Taraz Velour. They are three young black men who also wanted to create something and actually went out and did the ish. So, yeah.
That's what's up. We love, hearing about black creators because we all love people that go out there and do things that's on their mind and don't wait to get to it. Like with the podcast, talk with PJ, we really put a lot of effort to this, getting the things done, content, topics, guests. He's one of the main reasons why Ian's on here today because he told me way back a couple episodes ago that we should start bringing guests on with topics just to enhance the conversation even more. And it's really been working out for us with that. And since he mentioned Amon Bivens, I'm going to go ahead and tell y'all now, episode 12, 2 episodes from now, he's actually coming on for his mental health to talk about his Taraz Velour brand. And we're going to do a whole conversation on mental health. So stay tuned for that as well. But let's go ahead and get into today's topic. So for those that don't know, climate change is the global warming driven by human emissions and the large-scale weather patterns that happen in result of those human emissions. So that's just, and the main gases that contribute to these things are you have carbon dioxide, methane, chlorofluorocarbons, aerosol spray for those that don't know, and then nitrous oxide. But before we get deeper into this subject, I want to ask Ian, our climate environmental specialist here, what exactly does climate change mean to him?
Well, first, I'd just like to say that I'm not a specialist and not an expert or anything like that. I don't even have my bachelor's degree yet. So, for anybody watching this in the future, if I say anything wrong, I'm going to try to keep it as precise, but simultaneously as vague as possible, just so I can never be called out. But I thank you for kind of stopping at that definition because I think it's a something good to point out. I think it's good to recognize that what climate change really is, And one of the different pieces of literature that I'll try to refer to throughout the show, The Uninhabitable Earth, Life After Warming by David Wallace Wells, the term hyperobject is used. So climate theorist Timothy Morton calls a hyperobject a conceptual fact so large and so complex that it can never truly be comprehended. Climate change's size, scope, brutality, and most importantly, the time surrounding it can never truly be covered in one article, presentation, book, or conversation, which is, I know, a bit disparaging because, we're trying to have this conversation about it. But I just want everybody to know that it affects so much than just the weather, and it'll affect everybody's lives at some point. So, yeah.
PJ?
I don't got nothing to say after that. That man really just Uh, um,
You
you know
know,
what's crazy? It's you know what's crazy. You know what's crazy. So you say all this, right? You say
Mhm.
all what you just said and then it's like people go so deeply into like what climate change is and like the whole concept of it, and then some people will like completely dispute it and act like it's nothing at all, which is
Oh
kind of
yeah.
crazy. Which is kind of crazy to me. It's like some people have all these like complex definitions and theories and things like that, and some people really just don't believe in it at all, which is kind of ridiculous to me. I like what you said about it. What I think in general, climate change is, basically it's something that is going on because of how we live life,
Hmm.
which is kind of a reason why somebody like me is kind of like, there's a lot of things that we can do, but will we do it? A lot of people will say, you could do this for climate change, or if we do this, we can put an end, or we can try to prevent it. But a lot of the reasons that we're in it is because of the way we live life in general, which is why I feel like, things there's not much that can be done about it because people aren't going to change the way they live for it. That's kind of how I think about it. But yeah, I mean, it's the reason why it's 70 degrees in November. That's what climate change
Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean,
I was definitely,
I
I
mean
was definitely gonna say that.
that's definitely. I mean, you just touched on so many great points.
I was definitely about to say.
And to go back to kind of what you said with the whole you know we need to recognize it and we need to do this climate change. I really hope that we do it because climate change in essence to humanity and to the natural world is an extinction level event, one that will inevitably cause a evolutionary reset in the fossil record if we do not do what we need to do, if we do not change the way we consume goods, if we do not change the way we industrialize our world. I mean, and to say that something like this is a mass extinction or an extinction level event is no cap. It oh, sorry. All right, I'm done. But I mean, this type of mass this type of mass extinction has only occurred 5 other times in the history of our natural world. Like the first being 450 million years ago, and the last occurring around 65 million years ago. And before we move on, I just like to say that in those 5 events, all but one, the one that killed the dinosaurs, involved climate change and involved exactly what we are seeing today: an over an excessive amount of carbon dioxide and methane, along with a few feedback loops that would eventually kill up to, in some cases, 96% of all living things on the planet. So, yeah.
That's a shock. That's a shocking stat right there.
Yeah.
96%. That's a lot of people, man. That's a lot of people. And like
Yeah.
PJ said, bro, it's 70 degrees in November. Man, I'm not old, but I'm not young either. And I don't remember a time where it's been 70 degrees in November. I've never seen this. So like, guys, these things are truly happening. Like we have wildfires, especially in the summertime, probably every week in California, if not 3 a week at best, because California be getting wildfires like that. They just
That
be
is true.
happening. And then you got hurricanes. Even though hurricane season is still going on technically based on what research is, it does not end until November 30th technically. But when's the last time we had a hurricane on November 5th in Florida? Very rare. Does not happen. So these rare things that are happening are because of the way we are living and things that we are. And a lot of people say, how are we gonna do these things? Well, stay tuned. We're gonna get into those things, exactly how you can help and how you can push the agenda for, being active, because changing the way you live is nothing, no baby step. Like that's that we gotta take steps to that. So you gotta be able to understand how we're gonna get there. So we're gonna touch on that. First, we're gonna get into how we got here. So according to most climate change experts, they saying by 2027, which is about 6 years from now, they're gonna say that this is irreversible. Like what's done is done, ain't no going back. It's just gonna take its course, and it's all said and done. So we got 6 years to try to make some sort of difference or some kind of things. And a lot of y'all are saying, I know that people that don't believe in it, especially guys like our age and those that are older, thinking it's like, okay, it's not going to affect us. But like, everybody got a little cousin, everybody got like that little niece, nephew, they all deeply, deeply care for. If you're not thinking about it for yourself, then think about it for them. Because then once you leave, then they gotta grow up in this horrible environment where it's just I don't know. I guess I can't imagine how it would be. I can't put that together because obviously I don't know. But like just think about more than yourself when it comes to something that can affect 96% of all living things on the planet. But that's just as much as I'm gonna say on that. But the main things I have written here, obviously, are your factories, your big factories that the ones that emit that large amounts of smoke every day. Then you got car emissions, and then you got the non-renewable resources. Now those three things those are the main things because at this point, I feel like with the technology we have, I don't know why we're still mining oil like it's 1930. Like I know we got another way to do this, but I'm gonna let my piece end right here, and I'm gonna let Ian and PJ touch on the big things that contribute to the state of climate
Would you care to go?
I mean, it's basically like you said, like industrialization, like burning fossil fuel, of course. I mean that's basically the main cause of it. Like I said, like just the way we live life. A lot of the money makers are the reason that climate change is happening. Like big factories, big companies. A lot of the reasons that we make money as a nation, in my opinion. That's why I feel like it's gonna be hard to convince people that climate change like is an important issue to tackle. Basically, because a lot of the ways we make money are the reasons that the world the earth is essentially coming to an end. So I mean, it's gonna be a hard thing to change, but I mean the big reasons, like you said, are factories and things of that nature. A lot of cars that are burning fuels into the air. Basically
Mhm.
things like that. And I know Ian will probably have more information as to what is the main cause of it, but basically what you said is was correct.
Yeah, honestly, I'm really just going to emphasize a lot of things that you said. And Ira, to go back to your question of how did we get here? Um, since the start of the Industrial Revolution in the late 18th century, the burning of fossil fuels such as coal, gasoline, natural gas, oil, and methane for energy has led to increasing concentrations of greenhouse gases in our atmosphere. For instance, the burning of fossil fuels for energy, you got solid fuels such as coal, mainly coal, but you also have other minerals and stuff like that, which account for 35% of all electricity produced. You have liquid fuels such as gasoline, petrol, et cetera, that make up for 36%. And then we have gaseous fuels that make up, like, natural gas, the burning of methane, which is very, very detrimental to our atmosphere, and increasing the Earth's temperature. That accounts for 20%. I mean, when you have that much of the Earth's energy, largely in the global north, being produced by non-renewable resources that produce an excess amount of greenhouse gases, we're going to see events like we see now, like you were talking about how California has a forest fire every 3 weeks, or I mean, excuse me, every week, if not 3 times a week. And that's very true. So on top of that, we also have deforestation. I mean, 17% of the CO2 produced each year is absorbed by the Amazon rainforest. Yet we continue to deforest it, and these rainforests, within the equatorial band of our world, they're working harder and harder each year to try to purify the air in our world, to try to cool it down, take these greenhouse gases out. And we're just making it harder for those forests to thrive by producing more and cutting them down. And I mean, another large percentage of CO2 emissions are absorbed by places like the California redwoods, which are frequently being threatened by apocalyptic fires year round, like you said. And like I mentioned, sorry, I just wanted to touch on this last point. Like I mentioned, the Industrial Revolution and whatnot. And I just like to point out or give a disclaimer. People tend to believe that we're paying a debt back that we began to accrue in the industrial age. Like, for instance, the burning of coal in England and stuff like that. People are saying, well, that put in motion a sequence of events that we cannot stop. That's not necessarily true. While the burning of fossil fuels does date back to the Industrial Revolution, within the last 3 decades, we have produced more greenhouse gases than in all of the previous decades combined together. So the 1990s, the 2000s, and the 2010s have seen a dramatic increase of greenhouse gases and the subsequent warming of the globe. Part of this is because of positive and negative feedback loops. I mean, there are a lot of different reasons as to why. So, yeah, just thought I'd put that in there.
Couldn't agree with you more on that. Like he says, a lot of things that have been happening that have led to this, and especially like the last 3 decades, I do see a lot of times where most environmentalists, they refer to like the years 1970. They do that a lot because, like Ian just said, these past 3 decades, it's been on the rise rapidly, and more rapidly. And we gotta figure out a way how to stop those things. And then going back to the rainforests and the redwood and all major heavily wooded areas absorbing the CO2. Go a quick science lesson for you guys. So those that don't know, plants feed off CO2 while we feed off oxygen. So I'm just gonna break that down real fast for y'all to explain exactly the correlation for that.
Hey, some of them might need that though. So just go
Yeah,
ahead and do
just to
it.
explain the correlation, plants take in carbon dioxide, they excrete or I don't know, exhale oxygen. I don't know the exact term for that. We inhale oxygen, so it's a figure eight, if you will. It all goes back and forth. So you're cutting the trees down, and the carbon dioxide not going nowhere, and it's just getting put right back in the atmosphere. So
Right. And actually, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and explain another process that I feel as though people may not necessarily be familiar with. And this is the greenhouse effect, you know? So I'm going to try to break it down. I'm gonna try.
fourth, sixth, third grade.
We're laughing because Ira and I talked about this earlier, and we were saying they know that. And we were like, we're going to go ahead and explain it anyways. But the sun's energy drives the Earth's weather and climate. Some of this energy is absorbed through greenhouse gases, oceans, and land, while others is reflected by our ozone layer and ice caps. You know, for a long time, Earth's atmosphere contained a balance of these naturally occurring gases, you know, most notably methane, CO2, water vapor, and the other two chemicals. I really forgot their names that, you know, Ira mentioned earlier. This process has kept the Earth's temperature in a homeostatic condition. But of course, we know evidence is mounting that these greenhouse gases are being produced at a faster rate by humanity. You know, this is what the entire podcast is about today. And the bigger the presence of these greenhouse gases, the more heat is continuously trapped within our atmosphere that comes in from the sun, raising the homeostatic temperature, resulting in the weather patterns that we see now. You know, and just to go back to what I was talking about with the feedback loop. So like a positive feedback loop is a perfect example of this. So the more CO2 that we put out in the air or in our atmosphere makes the Earth hotter. Now, this melts something like permafrost, which is a mixture of ice and dirt in the Arctic Circle. When this permafrost melts, it releases methane, which makes our world even hotter. And this is a feedback loop because the carbon makes it hotter and melts the permafrost. The permafrost releases methane, which makes it hotter and produces more meltage from the permafrost, which keeps going and going and going until the Earth is hot. And it's just, it's very hard to stop a lot of these loops once they get started. So as PJ was saying earlier, you know, we really need to get a grip on what's going on.
Well, yeah, that's how, you know, important things right there. Get a grip, know exactly what we're speaking on today. So you can go ahead and get in your communities and try to make a difference. Try to speak to those politicians because sad enough to say, we got places. I ain't saying they're doing great things, but they're doing something. And that's what matters. That's the big thing here. So Canada's already ahead of the game.
Yeah.
People make fun of them. Oh, it's just plastic straws. Plastic straws go a long way. You'd be surprised. But other places like we have the Paris Accords, the one that Joe Biden talks about getting back into because Donald Trump left it, is
Yeah.
another big thing that helps
That
with
Joker Trump.
climate change as well. So like a lot of people say politics don't matter. It don't. It don't. It all comes together at some point. You'd be surprised how far politics dive into everything we talk about. It's pretty dramatic. And I'm gonna go off one last point right here, and then we're gonna go to the next topic. I remember Ian talking about back when the presidents, the Democratic, started back. I want to say last year, our junior year in college, when they started first running. He was talking about this guy by the name of Jay Inslee.
My
Um,
man, my man, Governor of Washington, my man, yes, sir.
he used to talk about him all the time about we need to focus on what he's doing, how he's going about it. And I don't know what the state of Washington has done because I don't know a lot about him. So I'm not going to speak on him too much.
Mm-hmm.
But when you look at Joe Biden's climate change plan, he's got some things going on to say that we're going to be 100% emission free by 2050. And y'all like, oh, that's almost 29 years away. And I'm like, it's something. It's something. It's not gonna happen overnight because, like we said earlier, when you're doing something like that, you're basically changing the way of how we live. So we're talking about cars not running off gasoline anymore. We're talking about cars going electric or some things like that, which is actually, better, surprisingly, but it is better. And, I don't know how smart this sounds, but I'm gonna go with it. I had an idea to myself one time. How would y'all feel if, like, cars ran off solar energy? How do you think that would be successful? I think it'd be successful.
I mean, I think it'd be successful. I think that unfortunately, corporations are going to do what they feel as though is in their best interest, not necessarily the interest of the commons or the public, but the interest of themselves. And if it costs more money to make cars run on solar energy and people aren't going to buy them, or the government may not subsidize the production of them, or whatever the case may be, I think that companies may not take that initiative. I think we're going to have to give a large push to a lot of those places.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll be successful if it happened, but there's not a high chance that something like that would happen. You know what I'm saying? Like Ian said, you have to, push. You have to push for it to happen. I don't think people really take it as seriously as it would need it to be taken for it to happen. Like I said, all this is happening based off our way of life, and people are not going to want to change the way they live to help the environment. Unfortunately, that's just how it is. That's just how people are. Like a big reason the world is struggling with climate change is because of the people in it. So I mean, I don't know. I think something like that would be a great idea. Something like that would be worth trying, but that's just us talking out here. You have to push a lot of people who may not believe in something like that. So, but yeah, I think it would be a successful venture. But that's just us.
Yeah, definitely. That's why I brought it up because I thought it was a good thing. So like
Mm-hmm.
that's another reason why I kind of got to the Biden thing really fast. He's a big advocate of trying to debunk these large corporations from acting on their best interest and acting for the interests of those that are governed. So that's a really big thing. And I'm not gonna lie, the 70 degrees of November, I'm not with it. And surprisingly, those that do know me, man, I can't stand the cold. I hate the cold more than anybody else. But when people talk about, oh, it's a nice day outside, I'm like, bro, it's 75 in November. It is hot. Like, bro,
Yeah.
I turned the AC on in November. This don't happen.
Yeah.
This does not happen.
I'm saying.
I'm getting in the car like, bro, why is it so hot here? Like, bro, it should be cold. It should be 50 degrees. But, I got my wishes because, starting next week, it's going to be 30 in the morning and a high of 50s in the afternoon. So, it's starting to trend to that cold. But it's taking longer and longer to get to that cold atmosphere. And at that point, like with eating with the positive feedback loops, eventually that feedback loop is going to become 100% positive, and then it's going to be hot all year, and nobody wants that. I truly don't want
Right. And you know, going back to your point with you know, Joe Biden, his and I think his is called the Biden deal, but I think the Democratic Party of the United States has something called the Green New Deal.
Yeah.
And you know, there's a lot of political rhetoric talking about it. People are, you know, can we afford it? Will it hurt our economy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? There's so many things worried about or focused on, you know, the economy, this market driven attitude. And people don't necessarily understand that we really shouldn't be discussing if we can afford to keep our world alive. You know, like that's not like if in order to save ourselves, our children, our children's children, and their children, if certain people can only drive cars on certain days of the week, as they do in some cities, then that's what it's going to have to be. I mean, we as a species need to understand that this is an existential threat. This is an existential crisis. And that if we have to throw whatever money at it to solve it, make whatever sacrifices to help aid future generations, then we need to come together and do that. So that is just, it's frustrating to see. I mean, this happened on the vice presidential debate. You know, you had Pence, RIP, because that boy is out, and the lovely, 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 lovely Vice President Harris. You know,
that boy is out.
That brother's starving.
Yeah, but you know, they
cooked in that debate. No cap.
He was cooked in that debate, but I mean, they had you know, they were talking about fracking and that they weren't going to abolish it, and people are trying to make compromises with these coal cities in Pennsylvania. I'm sure that statement will come back to bite me in the butt later, but you know, people are trying to make compromises with oil companies and this, that, and the third because they drive the economy. There's going to be a point in time where we have to stand back and look at the economy and say that, okay, this is not as important as our existence, as our overall existence, as the evolution and existence of the human race. And people really let money, as PJ, and our way of life, as PJ said, get in the way of these things.
I mean, that's one of the major turn-ons. Like, I seen this quote that said it was like what did it say? Ignoring climate change far exceeds the price of dealing with it.
Yeah.
So it's like I don't know. That's why I'm so pessimistic when it comes to even combating it. Just off the fact that people always look at, you know, the cost of something without realizing how effective it would be in the long run. Like, people are so worried about the now instead of being worried about the future.
Mm-hmm.
And like you hear a lot of people would say, you know, like, I don't want to have kids. And like, I'm pretty sure you said it before. You don't really want to bring kids into this world based off the fact that the world is failing due to the fact that these things are happening.
Of course.
And it's like you mentioned the Green New Deal, and that's what turns a lot of people off of it, is like the cost of it now instead of thinking about how effective it could be in general.
Exactly.
It's like,
I mean,
it's annoying to see how, like, you know, I feel like the world prioritizes a lot of things that aren't important while ignoring what is important. And like, this could be an important thing. Like, the Green New Deal, it's like, it's expensive, but it could be worth it. You know what I'm saying? So It's kind of annoying to see people will like kind of just they won't even bat an eye at something that, you know, is designed to save the planet, a planet that our children, their children will have to live in. So it's like, it's kind of ignorant to like view it as, oh, it's not going to affect me, so I'm not going to pay attention to it.
Not to get on my soapbox either, but this book right here, This Changes Everything, Capitalism versus the Climate by Naomi Klein. Great read. I really recommend that everybody at least check it out, maybe read a synopsis or a summary of it. But it basically explains that she has like this lame joke in there where it's like, the seed that everybody needs to be worried about when it comes to climate change isn't carbon, it's capitalism. And to a certain extent, it's true. I mean, consumer culture, the way we live our life, these are topics that we keep touching on in this conversation. We can't keep looking at profit. We can't keep looking at the economy. We can't keep looking at all of these things that stem from capitalism, because at the end of the day, capitalism stands for the exploitation of people, the exploitation of governments, and the exploitation of the environment, things that we need in our lives to stay safe and exist. And so if we truly allow the market and we truly allow capitalism to dictate where we spend our money and what we see and what we view as valuable, I don't think we're going to stand a chance.
Yeah, that's that. I was really about to go into that. Capitalism is a big killer. I saw a lot of people, especially with the COVID thing and other things going on as well. It was like, why can't we just do these things? It all seems so simple. And I retweeted, quoted a tweet yesterday. And I was like, in a capitalist society, a lot of things are not possible because of like what Ian said, the way we live, the consumer like produced. I can't think of that correctly, but it's not gonna work. That's why a lot of people are opposed to going to a socialist like economy, even though that is what nobody is absolutely trying to do, but trying to push more socialist concepts into the capitalist society so we can fix these things like, climate change, allocating money to better areas, and more things. And obviously the virus pandemic as well, being able to, provide rent-free housing, pay for the Green New Deal. And it kills me when people say that it costs too much money. And I have never ever understood how you could be in debt to yourself. That it blows my mind because, America, we create our own currency, we do all these things, and then we come back and we say, we're 12 trillion in debt. I'm like, bro, we create the currency. How is this? Ain't like we got a world bank or something, but hey, I'm just a messenger. I ain't gonna really get too much into that because I have a whole other mindset and ideals for that. But join us back for part two on this conversation. We're going to hit on environmental justice, and then we're going to talk about how you at home can get involved and try to make a difference. This is our signing off. PJ, as always, my man Ian in the top left corner over there, and see y'all soon.